If you have not subscribed, please click the like button, share and subscribe. It's free.
Corruption that made sure that Ghana does not pay its international debt. As a result, today, Ghana is unable to self-determine because everything else is dictated to Ghana by IMF and the World Bank because the current leadership failed to honor their obligation. Corruption is a threat to a wonderful democracy anyway, because it's eating on the moral fiber of democratic dispensation. We must never ever celebrate anyone who is corrupt or seek to defend the corrupt individuals irrespective of our political affiliation. The truth remains the truth, whether you are standing, whether you are sitting, whether you are sleeping, the truth will never change. And one thing you must know is that when you tell the truth to the powers that be, they may pretend now that they do not hear what you are saying. But when they are sleeping alone, their conscience speaks to them, and they must answer the question, is he or she telling the truth? And if the answer is yes, you have achieved your mission. They will never know they are corrupt until someone tells them on their faces that you are for yourself, you are for your family, you are for friends, you are for the politically connected, and you are not for our continent, because our continent is about the unity of African people that is based on economic ownership of the means of production. I want to say this today here, that xenophobic people are...
Do please allow me to let my guest today introduce himself. Sir, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I am tempted to say something, but let me not. Nianguke nayo. I want to say
Piki piki ponki pakamielo disco.
I want to say it, but I'm trying to be really professional.
That has become my trademark.
Yes.
My name is Willis Otieno.
Mm.
I'm an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. But nowadays I style myself as a social activist.
Yeah.
And the people of Kenya have given me the name Piki Piki Ponki. So I own it.
Yes.
Because it summarizes the state of the nation today. We are doing things in a topsy-turvy manner. The unusual is the usual, and the usual is unusual. So I'm glad to be with you and to shed more light on the state of the nation.
Good.
Yes.
I really do appreciate you taking your time. It's been long overdue. We really wanted to have this conversation, and we said we'll wait until time is right for us to sit with you. But how are you feeling about Kenya right now? The current, political atmosphere, where we are as a nation. How are you feeling?
I will say that the state of our nation is perilous. But of import is that the people of Kenya have now reclaimed their voice. For the last 60 years, we've been slaves to a political system, an economic system that draws blood out of us to feed itself. And that is why the nation today, as it's set up, it is not working for the people. It's working for their interests. Whereas the people who have to toil, who have to work hard to feed that system. And I'm very proud of our people that for the first time, regardless of our tribes, our age, our whatever biases, we are speaking on the people's agenda. We are saying this country must make meaning to all Kenyans. And the bravery that you've seen of across the entire country, people coming out and even in the face of hostility from the political system, they are not backing down. And they are not asking for more. They are simply saying, we want the following. And it's accountability. It's about people's interest. It's only in Kenya where you find someone who was almost bankrupt last year, joins the government this year, and is able, within 1 year, he's bought a parcel of land worth 100 million. He's bought a house worth 200 million. He's wearing clothes, his body alone, is wearing 5 million shillings when he walks out of the house.
Yeah.
And we know what his salary is. So when you ask yourself, how does he make this much money? And he has no business that he's doing that you can say. Even if you asked him to bring your returns, your tax returns, you will not find a declaration of that income. But his worth is almost, in less than 1 year, almost 1 billion Kenyan shillings. Whose money is that?
Our money.
That is your money. When you go to buy bread in the shop, you're paying VAT. When you buy fuel, when you even use a border, because every Kenyan contributes to the kitty. Every Kenyan participates in raising money. And why they put that money in a pool is for the money to be used to their benefit. But what we've witnessed is that once that money is collected in a pool, that political group sits down and starts cutting the cake to their benefit and to the disadvantage of the poor Kenyan. Then they come down to that Kenyan again and ask him, now produce more. This Kenyan has been harmed, he's been hurt, he's not benefited from the money that he collected last year. You're not telling him to give me more. Now you are coming to the Kenyan to give you more, to feed your greed, not to serve him. And I love it that our Kenyans have said no.
Yeah.
And for the first time, things will never be the same again. Our politics will not be the way it has been. It will be about the people. And we're in a very good era. Actually, I compare it. The last time that the world was in this space was in the 1700s. And we got the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Asian Revolution. It was also the age of the Industrial Revolution. We are witnessing again an uprising across the world of people saying, no, enough is enough. Let us have governments or leadership that is about us. And I draw a parallel to what is driving this narrative. It's the technological revolution. It is not about people going to political rallies or being paid to come out. It's just somebody writing on his Twitter, on his X, on his Instagram, TikTok, and their voices are being heard, and they're able to mobilize to face this monster that has always put us in prison in all these years. So it's an interesting times. And let me also say this. As part of the problem is how the tax is used. But something interesting that we need to understand is that if you look at how much has been borrowed in your name, you've actually paid 60 years of taxes in advance, which they're using. So this system has not only enslaved you, but has also enslaved your children and your children's children.
Generations.
So 60 years of tax has been taken. Why do I say 60 years of tax has been taken? Because debt is tax in advance. Because it's your tax money that is used to pay that debt. So even if you pay that tax next year, part of it will go towards settling the debt. And then you ask yourself, what was that debt taken for? And let's understand this. The starting point in Kenya, if you look at our constitution, the chapter on public finance, it's very clear. You must come up with what is called a balanced budget. And all monies that Kenya government receives, all the money, be it tax, be it debt, be it levies, charges, must find its way in a consolidated fund. So you bring all the money together.
Yeah.
Unless you specifically exclude a particular levy. So you can say, for example, the roads maintenance levy is a levy established under the Roads Act. We've set up a fund so that we take the money direct to that fund.
Yeah.
So we are clear. What did these guys do? And once it goes to the consolidated fund, for you to remove it, the people of Kenya, through their parliament, the days when it used to work, will sit down every June and pass what is called an Appropriations Act. Appropriations to remove the money. So the Appropriations Act will set out, these are the revenue estimates that we are going to receive. These are the appropriations, expenditures, how we are going to spend the money. So we are going to spend this much to pay salaries. We'll spend this much for operations. We'll spend this much for development. So we are building a road from Nairobi to Mombasa, for example. This is the amount. And of this amount, we are going to use tax revenue. 60% finance will be tax revenue, 40% we are taking a loan. And you identify who that lender is that is going to finance the project. What did these guys do? They went and decided to open an avenue for for them to go and borrow money in your name as a Kenyan and then exempt it from coming into the consolidated fund.
Wait, what?
Yes. They amended the PFM Act, Public Finance Management Act, in 2013. So all this thing was designed. Kimani Chungwa is the one who moved that motion. I mean, Aden Duale is the one who moved that motion. Kimani Chungwa was the chair of budget.
Yes.
And they said, from the constitution says you put all the money in the consolidated fund. Then they say no. For external loans, you can spend this money to pay financial arrangers, insurers, brokers, legal counsels, so many other players. So I can go into Europe today and I say, I'm the President of the Republic of Kenya. I want a loan. Then I'm given a loan. Now, don't send that money to Kenya. Send it to this foreign account. I'll give you an account. The same people of Kenya had said, if you borrow money, you can only borrow money for development to finance a project. I am doing Thika Road, or I'm doing the road from Thika, expanding it all the way to Nyeri.
Yeah.
That's a project. So you can only borrow money to pay for it. And when you're doing that Thika Road from Thika to Nyeri, do you know what it does? We know that this project should be viable. So we are going to spend, let's say, 100 billion. So I'm going to pump 100 billion into the economy of that road.
Yeah.
During construction, I'm going to use largely, for example, local materials. So the cement manufacturer must manufacture more cement. I'm going to employ skilled and unskilled laborers on that road. So people will have disposable income who are employed in that project.
Yeah.
So in the evening, the cigarette seller will sell more cigarettes. At lunchtime, the baker will have to bake more bread because these people consume a lot of carbohydrates.
Yes.
So they have to produce more bread. The grocer must bring more produce in the evening for them to go home with because they have disposable income. And where does government get its money? Government will be collecting its money from pay-as-you-earn, from the VAT that is collected from the consumables. So during construction, the cement manufacturer has employed more people. He's selling more. He's paying more in corporate tax. He's also paying more in pay-as-you-earn. So during construction, this project will be paying back government money. Then post-construction, because you look at a project in terms of its viability to government.
Yeah.
So post-construction, Karatina, if it is now, it was 1 hour from Nairobi, because of the expanded road network, Karatina now becomes 30 minutes drive. I live in Nairobi in an apartment. I say, why should I live in a scorched apartment in Nairobi? So I can as well go and buy 5 acres in Karatina.
Why not?
30 minutes I'm in the city.
Yeah.
So post-construction, you see a property boom of people moving into that area to buy more property and to build. So the stimulus effect I was telling you about continues because you're going to earn more in stamp duty as government. You're going to earn more in terms of what the construction workers, the material that they're using, because they're going to spend.
Yeah.
And you see your coffers expanding. But what this guy did was this. They go and take a loan in your name. The money is stashed somewhere in Qatar or in Cayman Islands. It does nothing. But you're coming back to the same Kenyan people to collect taxes to pay that loan. That money never landed here. It's never stimulated anything.
Okay. Let me put a stop kidogo, because now this is where we really need to understand things from a layman's perspective. You've said our constitution clearly stipulates that we only get loans for development purposes, right? So let me bring now IMF and World Bank, not the domestic lenders.
Yes.
Let's talk about IMF and World Bank. They are the ones on the spot right now. If today I say I need to go get, first and foremost, who is supposed to go get a loan on behalf of Kenyans? Does it always have to be the president?
Started this way. The president is an employee of the people of Kenya.
Yes.
He's a servant. He is not a monarch. He does not rule by fiat. He is a president because the people of Kenya, using their constitution, have made him president.
Yes.
So anything he does must be within the parameters of the law. So if he goes to borrow IMF and World Bank have a responsibility to ask him, where do you draw the authority to come and borrow this money?
Good.
That's what they should ask him. Then they ask him, what does your law say about borrowing? They should be able to point out, even them on their own, they should be doing their own due diligence to find that Kenyan law only says you borrow for development. And that borrowing must be approved by the Kenyan people. So Parliament must approve that money that you want to borrow.
Yeah.
But what we've seen happening, World Bank, for example, World Bank only finances development projects. IMF does what they call budgetary support and to show up a currency. Let's speak on World Bank. Kenya government says, we want to do this project. Then World Bank disburses the money. Like in most counties, I'm sure people have seen these urban renewal projects. That's a World Bank funded project. But at least on that one, the World Bank is doing the disbursements direct to the contractors themselves.
Okay.
But in some instances, they give money to the government. Then once they give the money to the government, as the controller of budget was saying, sometimes you received money for a particular project from the World Bank. It was to build a road from Nairobi to Mau Summit.
Yeah.
They decided to use this money, allegedly, to pay recurrent expenditure, to pay salaries, per diems, and allowances. World Bank should have a responsibility to say, no, whatever we borrowed from you, we gave you, we lent you, we got your parliamentary approval. It was for this specific project. And the drawdowns should be as the project is being implemented. But there seems to have been somewhere along the way, this order seems to have been abandoned. Money comes, whatever it's used for, we don't know. Then you go to IMF, that offers all the so-called budgetary support. What is budgetary support in our constitution? Because we're a country of laws. Our budgetary support should be limited to we achieving a balanced budget. And our balanced budget is that these are our revenue, what we estimate to collect from our people. These are our expenditures. In fact, the Kenyan people hope in their laws that we should never live beyond our means. So if your budget is not balancing, to achieve a balanced budget, if it's not balancing, then you must start by cutting down. And cutting down may even mean don't do any project. That is why we are saying you only borrow for project finance. So you're not being told IMF is offering budgetary support services. In the scheme of our laws, where do they come in? Because we didn't anticipate at any point that we should be living beyond our means. We should at all times be living within our means. You're saying you've only collected 1.6 trillion. Your budget should not be more than 1.6 trillion. If it is more beyond 1.6 trillion, you're saying I'm to do this road worth 600 billion. And I'm going to take a loan from A, B, C, D. Or if you can't get the loan, then don't do the project. Maintain the government the way it is, because we had anticipated that we should never find ourselves in a debt trap. But we are seeing IMF giving money. And as they're giving money, they come with conditionalities. And in the IMF book of conditionalities, which they have used over and over in all countries they've been to, number one conditionality is normally this: remove all subsidies. That is why you saw the fuel subsidy removed. They want to say they want to feel the market should determine the prices. So they first remove subsidies. They go for university education. Government has been subsidizing university education. Remove those subsidies. That's why you're seeing crazy fees being slapped on our poor children. Remove Edu-Afia. Remove. So everywhere the government has a subsidy, remove.
Linda Mama.
Toka.
Remove.
But you ask yourself, in our laws, where do we anticipate IMF coming in here? Because it's a foreign lender. If it's going to support our budget, it should tell us, are you supporting recurrent or development expenditure? We anticipate our recurrent expenditure should be met with our own money, what we collect. If you are supporting development project, IMF does not fund project. It's World Bank that funds projects. So IMF should not be anywhere near here. So what they're doing, they're giving government money to run. They're the ones now, so to speak, sustaining the Kenyan government. because they're giving the Kenyan government money illegally, and it's not free lunch. It's a loan. We will pay for it. So which project are they funding? None. Which recurrent expenditure are they funding? We don't need them to fund recurrent expenditure. The only time by the I should add this, that our laws allow for borrowing for recurrent expenditure is only for what is called in the short term to address liquidity issues. Like you need, and it should not be more than 5% of the previous year's revenue. So Kenya government, if you take 5% of the previous years, she will never borrow more than 90 billion. Only 90 for recurrent expenditure. And it should be liquidity, short term, it's paid within the year. So I'm taking this loan, maybe I need to pay some cash quickly, because government collects money every week. I'm facing just a cash challenge today. So you can go borrow to settle something, but within the year, that money should not be paid. And Central Bank of Kenya maintains an account, the overdraft account, for that purpose. But now IMF is running the show. They're coming with conditions. Number 2 condition in IMF list after subsidies is normally privatization. Privatize. Let the market decide. When there's talk of privatization, for example, now they say go and privatize JKIA.
Is that true, by the way?
Of course.
That we are looking into privatization of JKIA?
That one is there. It's not even an IMF thing, but it is the Adani Group.
Yes.
They are attempting to give them the contract to take over JKIA. What was wrong with JKIA under KA? JKIA has been making, it's not insolvent. It's able to meet its needs. It's able to run the airport efficiently. What we needed, which they did away with, was to expand the terminal, build a new terminal, and Kibaki, by the time he was leaving, had already passed all that, even signed a contract. It was worth only 55 billion Kenyan shillings to build a new airport. I'm told now the figure they're talking about there is almost 200 billion. And then they take over that airport for almost 30 years. Go to Kenya Pipeline, IMF will tell you this. Why is government doing Kenya Pipeline? Privatize. So any strategic parastatal that you have is privatized. But as this is happening, you ask yourself, who has the money to buy? Because as Kenyans, we've been overtaxed. Our economy has shrunk. We are not able to buy it. We can't buy it. So it is the internationalists, the people in Western capitals who have the money, who will come and buy, or with their local acolytes who've stolen our tax money, that will buy those assets. So perpetually we become what? We continue being slaves. Because now they have the money, they have the assets. Every time you use the airport, you're paying a minimum 100 shillings. Because entering that airport is 100 bob if you have a car. They don't allow borders inside the airport.
Strategically.
Strategically, yeah. So everybody who walks into the airport pays just entrance fee alone. Now imagine owning all of it. So you become their slave. And you'll see it in all sectors. So privatization happens, but it is other people, oligarchs, international, but with the local players. You'll find somewhere there's a politician or somebody who has been a top civil servant who is a partner to that person. So they keep controlling you. Number 3, on the IMF one, once they privatize, number 3 normally is that the whole thing fails. There is no country the IMF has ever walked into that succeeded. Ghana was in IMF program, a record almost 9 times. Then this financial system collapsed. Greece, Lebanon, Cyprus, Zambia, Ethiopia. There is nowhere IMF does not come to solve your problem, or the source of your problem. The moment you allow them into your financial system, that is where we find ourselves in. So for the people of Kenya, we must say no.
But someone would ask, when I need a loan from a bank, I'm the one who approaches the bank. The bank has conditions. They have their interest rate. They're actually giving me conditions because I'm the one who needs the loan, right? It's not like IMF has put a gun on Kenya, like, hey, borrow from us, it's a must. We are the one who approach them to borrow. They've never said, hey guys, come Kenya, let's give you this money. We actually do. We approach these people and we borrow. So what motive, what's the correlation between now IMF willingly giving us this money, and is there a hidden motive that they want these African countries to
Of course, it's true. They've not put a gun on our head to borrow. But there's what we call buyer beware. When somebody walks into IMF to say, I want to take a loan, or I want budgetary support, IMF must do what they call their due diligence. Before we enter into a program with you, are you a country of the rule of law? Where are your laws? Or are you a monarch? You are King Mswati, who rules without a constitution.
Yes.
That it is your word that you take. But no, you are a republic. A republic governed by the rule of law. You have a constitution. Okay? Give me a copy of your constitution. In terms of public finance, do you have a loan public finance? Give me that loan public finance. So IMF should on their own be able to say, we've looked at your laws, and what it says, we can't see our role in your laws. Because as per your laws, you are limited to only borrow for development. We don't have capacity to give development lending. If you want to borrow for development, go to our sister World Bank.
Yes.
So IMF is not doing this. But you ask yourself why? They are not there for the interest of the people of Kenya. So to them, they've seen an opening where they can control you. Because IMF represents interests, all these things about interests. And which are the interests that show up IMF? IMF does not produce its own money. There are countries that contribute to that. So look at the top contributors. Whose money is it? You'll find number one will be the American people as contributors to IMF. So when they use their money, American taxpayers' money, what is the benefit? See, they're the ones who will come and start taking over. Those assets I'm telling you about, the privatized parastatals.
Yeah.
Because they have money. They are capable of coming, and
they want their money back.
They'll get their money through. They'll be the businessmen who will buy those parastatals. So IMF has only come in here to lay the ground for them. Then when they come, it's a scorched earth. Then they come to ban. Then the rescue mission will be the profiteers who are from the capitals that fund IMF. You will not see a Kenyan being considered to buy a JKI or Kenya pipeline. Tell me, there will be no Kenyan directly. Because the amount you'll be quoted for, there's no Kenyan who has that kind of money. And even if you had, you will not be considered in the room. Because the terms, the people who are setting the terms, will now be the IMF. We've actually surrendered our economy. It's now their economy. It's now their money that is running this economy. So everything will be done to the advantage of the interests that they represent. And they don't represent African interests. They don't. It is the people who put money in that program. And which countries do they come from? And if you think that they work for the interest of the people, tell me one country that IMF has done a program that turned out successful. So you ask, then why do we still go? I say that international institutions, they also have a legal and a moral obligation. Before you engage with a country, you must adhere to that country's laws. You must respect that country's laws. You cannot just say that because it's the president who has appeared before me with his finance minister and attorney general, they have the authority of the people. No. These are not the owners of the country. These are servants of the country. Just like me today, if I have shares in Safaricom, I cannot just walk into a bank and say, I want to take a loan in the name of Safaricom. They'll ask me for a memorandum, a board resolution that approves the taking of that loan and that appoints me, for example, as the nominee to represent the company in those loan negotiations. But these guys don't do that.
So we are saying the president just walks in and he says, I need a loan, and they give him a loan.
Yes, they give them the loans. They don't do their due diligence. Because if they did their due diligence, they'll find that IMF has no role in Kenya. In our fiscal structure, the way we've done our PFM Act. Before, during the Moi days, before the 2010 Constitution, maybe because it was open, we didn't have restrictive laws. They had a role.
Yeah.
But in this new order, Kenyan people are very clear on their budget. They're saying, this is how you make a budget. And your budget must have revenue and expenditure. And the revenue, it specifies where it should come from. Revenue is tax revenue. That is why you have a finance bill, what we've been fighting over.
Yeah.
That's a tax raising legislation. We are going to raise VAT from these areas. And we're increasing it by this much. 12 before didn't have VAT, now it became vatable. 8%, now it's 16%. So if you're consuming this number of liters of fuel in a year, if we increase VAT to 16%, we know now our estimates will collect this much as revenue. So every sector, government can tell you, this is the revenue. Then at the bottom they say, these are revenue estimates from local tax. Then we go to what they call appropriations in aid. That is money that, for example, you pay court filing fees, you pay for a government service, any government service, printing of IDs. You know, appropriations in aid will raise this much. That is revenue. That's the money you have. Then they go further and tell you, now we'll take loans. This is a revenue. We'll take loans worth this much. So that is the revenue side of government, of budget. Then you go to the expenditure side. The money we are going to collect, this is how we are going to use it. There is nowhere that you can see anticipated IMF's role. Because on our development, we've specifically said development budget, you must get parliamentary approval, number one, and it can only be to finance a project. So IMF should be telling us, which project are you funding, which project are you financing, and where did Parliament approve that project?
Yeah, but then
So it's not there.
Does that mean World Bank is safe?
World Bank to an extent is safe, to the extent only that they can show which projects they're funding. In fact, our problem is not even largely World Bank. Because World Bank, even them, they are a bit strict. Even if you find World Bank supports a project. In most cases, World Bank, by the time they go through the approval processes and the drawdowns, they are a bit strict. Our main problem is the IMF and these domestic banks, how they lend to government without following the law.
Talk to us about the domestic banks.
So I've explained that borrowing should only be for development.
Yes.
Now, government borrows from the domestic market through what is called treasury bills and bonds, which are issued every so often, every week or two. You find them floating there.
Yeah.
Now, that is government going to buy bonds. They float bonds in the market, and the banks, they're the largest purchasers. Normally it's banks, pension funds, SACCOs, or even individuals. But the number one people who take up the bonds are usually banks. So I'll focus on domestic banks.
Okay.
Now, domestic banks, number one, are driven by profit. They don't care about the interests of the people of Kenya. A bank, you're a businessman. You want to make money. So government comes to you and say, hey, I want 20 billion Kenya shillings. Okay, you want 20 billion? Interest rate? I'll put it at, because people float, suggest, I'll put it at 16%, another one will say 17, 18. Then they do the weighted average. Then the government takes it. And remember, in this case, it is the market that is telling you the interest rate they want. Me, I have 2 billion, I'll only give you at 18% interest rate. Or me, I have 20 billion, I'll give you at 18%. So it's the market that is deciding for you the interest rate for government. So government takes the money. Now, these banks never bother to ask, where is the approval to float this infrastructure bond? Why is Kenya government asking us to lend that money? Because as per Kenyan law, you are required to only take a loan for a project. So this bond that you are floating, which project is it going to finance? So you've seen the borrowing, almost over 2 trillion Kenya shillings from the domestic market. But we are not seeing a project being financed that is worth 2 billion.
2 trillion.
And we are not seeing in the budget where Parliament and the people of Kenya have said, we will borrow this much
for this
for this
project
from
the
this will be for the domestic market. It doesn't exist. So understand what happens here. Jimmy Wanjigi did an audit of borrowing over the last 10 years, from 2013 to 2023. And he went year by year, domestic borrowing, year by year. And something interesting that came out of his audit was this. You find Kenya government goes in a year, I think it was 2013 to 2014, 2015, they borrowed around 298 billion Kenya shillings in that 1 year. And then the same year, they paid 290 billion as interest.
Wait, what?
In the year when you borrowed 290 billion, you paid as interest to domestic banks almost 280 billion. In other words, if you're fiscally prudent, you had this money anyway.
Yeah, you are just less 10 billion.
You had this money and you paid it. And government does not have to pay money, like there's never an urgency to pay the money immediately. You could have as well delayed paying your suppliers and collect the money and pay for it. Why are you paying such exorbitant interest when the money was in your hand in the first place? You're going to collect it anyway. Now what happens, and this is the scheme here, these domestic banks you see here, they are the number one borrowers, lenders to government. When they put an interest rate of 16%, government will come to you and I to collect tax, to pay that interest rate. There's a scheme to get money out of your pocket. Because the books, they will say, we have an obligation to pay interest rate of 298 billion. So they come and collect your taxes to pay that bank. That bank is a private bank. Once the money is received, somewhere along the way, I believe, there are people in government who have their share in the interest rate. And remember, the whole scheme starts from, it is you and I who deposit money in the bank. So it's my money that the bank is holding, us as depositors as a group. That is the money that your government, the bank takes to your government. It's your deposit. They don't have at your money tree somewhere or a vault somewhere that is their own money. No, it is the depositor's money that they accumulated. They go to the depositor's government and tell him, I want to give you a loan. Then your government takes that loan. Your government comes back to you, the depositor, in increased taxes, collects your taxes, and pays it to the bank. The bank credits your account with the amount that they are taken from you, minus interest or minimal interest. But they have made a lot of money in interest. That is what is shared. And in over 10 years, in that audit that Jimmy did, he was able to show that if you just take all the revenue we collected, so write down all the revenue collected in 10 years, 2013, 2023, last year, our revenue was 13.3 trillion. That is money Kenyan people collected as revenue. Then you go to expenses. They call it a balanced budget. You go to all the expenses minus debt in the same period. Our expenses were only 14.7 trillion. So it meant in the 10-year period, you take the 13, which was your revenue, and the 14, which was your expenses, your deficit, what you ought to have gone to borrow,
is a trillion.
Was only a trillion, 1.3 trillion. But how much did they borrow? 7.7 trillion. That is where the mischief is. So it meant that somebody borrowed almost 6.4 trillion more than was necessary. And to what end? Which project did it finance? And the bulk of that borrowing is now what you see as domestic bonding, lending. Number two area again that I must mention, so I don't lose it. We've now gotten into this new world of called syndicated loans, the Eurobonds. International banks were doing the same thing our domestic banks are doing. Even them, they're just floating to government loans at crazy interest rates, and the Kenyan people pay. So this all set up, as things stand today, has guaranteed you that you have taken loans, because if in 10 years, your deficit was only 1.3 trillion, but you borrowed 7.7. You guaranteed that if it took you 10 years to our deficit of 1.3. But you've borrowed over and above that by 6.4. So you've taken a loan of almost 60 years ahead. You've borrowed 60 years ahead. So you're a slave for the next 60 years. Unless you gather the courage to confront this financial system. And you tell them, no, wait a minute. This loan that you said you gave the people of Kenya, us are the people who pay for this loan. We said our loaning is only for development. And it must be approved by Parliament. Show us the parliamentary approval. Number two, show us which project it financed. If you can't show us, we'll tell you we are not paying it. Because it's an illegal debt. It's an odious debt.
So we default.
We don't default. We declare it odious.
We don't even default.
We don't even say it's illegal.
We say we don't know it.
We don't know it.
See
See
at defaulting.
No defaulting.
Tuijui.
Hatuijui. Because even the bank has a duty. The bank has a duty to do its due diligence.
When they are lending.
Yes, even
Kwanza, hey, that process is the most tiresome.
You are taken through a rigorous process.
Yes.
Huh? They are asking, you said you are late, give us a copy of your ID.
Good.
Give us a copy of your
salary, your pay slip for the last.
They'll even call your employer to confirm if indeed
Yes.
you work there.
Yes.
That is what is called due diligence. By the time your loan is approved, the bank knows you in and out.
So not only are we saying that we don't owe IMF anything, we are also saying we don't recognize.
We don't owe the local banks that have lent to Kenya government.
Even the local banks.
Yes.
This is not just an IMF issue. Even the local banks.
Even the local banks are affected. Because they've given money illegally. Because if you put them to task,
they can't.
Just put PFM Act here. Put Section 15 is here.
Yes.
Says you only borrow for development. And number two, you must get parliamentary approval. Call all those lenders and ask them, show us the parliamentary approval for this loan. Show us which project it financed. They will not show you. And if we are a country of the rule of law, why should we pay? That's not our loan.
Hey.
You people went and played games with officials. You decided to ignore the law. Why should it now be our obligation to now accommodate you for your financial malfeasance? We should say no.
To deal to the World Bank.
World Bank too. Now in Guinea. There are some other loans which are legitimate. Those ones which you'll find, for example, Africa Development Bank, AFD, JICA loans. And if you look at the Appropriations Act, you'll find them identified. This JICA, they are supporting the development of this road. They are going to finance it. It's there in the Appropriations Act.
Yes.
World Bank is funding this project. It is there. All those are documented in our Appropriations Act, which is taken to Parliament, and Parliament votes to approve. So anybody who is not in our Appropriations Act, tunalenga story. We tell you we don't know you, and we can't pay, and we won't pay. This thing has been done in other countries. You know, the last that I followed was Malaysia and Mozambique. In Mozambique, they had what they were calling the tuna bond. That time when Kenya was floating the Euro bonds, Mozambique, they decided to float tuna bond, $2 billion US. Kenya Euro bond that time, again Euro bond, $2 billion US. Same concept, same lenders, international banks. So they go and take money in the name of the people of Mozambique, and the money does not land in Mozambique. What lands in Mozambique is the obligation to pay a loan. Not the money. The obligation to pay is what they take to the people of Mozambique. Like now, you have this loan of $2 billion US. Can you pay it? So some people go to court in Mozambique, their constitutional court. They sue the Attorney General, even their parliament. And they're saying, wait a minute. As per our laws, we only pay for our loaning, you must get parliamentary approval. Our parliament never approved this tuna bond of $2 billion US. Surprise, surprise. Their parliament was saying, no, we must pay. The Mozambique government is a sovereign government. It must pay its loans. People said, no, you parliament yourself never approved. How can you ask us to pay for it? And their court said, I mean, this is common sense. There was never approval. The money didn't come in to Mozambique. The Mozambique people have no obligation to pay. It's an odious, it was declared an odious debt, $2 billion US. As I sit here today, Credit Suisse, which was the financial arranger, has collapsed. They were forced to pay back that money. Even what Mozambique had been paying, partly paying as interest to that loan. They were forced to pay. That bank, Credit Suisse, has collapsed. There are people from the bank, Credit Suisse, who are in jail. There are people in Mozambique, including the former president's son. It's called President, the one who was there before President Nyusi. The son is in jail. The finance minister is in jail. I think he was in exile somewhere in South Africa, but they've repatriated him. The head of intelligence is in jail. Because people are being asked, what were you doing? You went and took money in the name of the people of Mozambique without following the law. The people of Mozambique will not pay, and they didn't pay. So also our Eurobond. If you trace Eurobond, the Eurobond 1, there have been 7 Eurobonds, but let's take Eurobond 1 of 2014. That Eurobond, $2 billion. 1 billion you can trace from JP Morgan all the way to Central Bank. Part of it, illegally again, used to settle a loan that Kibaki had taken. And part of it, you trace it in our accounts. That is $1 billion US dollars accounted for. But this $1 billion US dollar, you can see it coming from JP Morgan. But if I show you the SWIFT, it is redacted, blanked out. You can't tell which is the receiving account. You don't know where the $1 billion US dollar went. All you see is the obligation on the people of Kenya that you have a loan of $2 billion US dollars. Why should we pay that money? In all fairness, we should tell JP Morgan and if they were the financial arrangers of Citibank that we are sorry. That money, number one, when you floated the Eurobond, you didn't follow the Kenyan laws. Number two, you didn't fund any project. Why should we pay for it? Tunaruka deni. Dawa deni si kulipa, ni kuruka in this instance.
IMF, what can we trace and what can we not trace?
IMF, the problem with IMF, when they tell you they're shoring the currency and providing budgetary support, we should just ask them to give us the list, how much, the schedule of payments they've made on behalf of the Kenyan people, to confirm how much it is. And we tell them, IMF, we are sorry. If you are paying people's salaries in Kenya, we are very sorry. We don't have an obligation to pay you. Because as it is now, there is no publicly available information as to how much money the IMF has expended.
Why is there no such transparency?
And you see, that is the problem. In our constitution, Article 10, it sets out the principles of government. One of them is transparency and accountability. IMF cannot just walk into Kenya without following our laws and then committing us on a loan process that we don't, a financial system that we don't know, that does not follow our laws. So now we have an obligation to pay you. You are expending money in our country. On what basis? Why is IMF spending money on Kenya? So why should, and if they were genuine, why can't they make it public that we are giving Kenya this much money, and this much money will be used for this particular purpose? If Kenyan law says you cannot give us money for recurrent expenditure, we don't have any provision in our laws that says you can help shore up our currency or provide budgetary support services. We don't have it. IMF should have told the Kenyan people, go and make your laws.
Provide
for this.
A provision for this.
It. Yeah. This doesn't exist. In our Appropriations Act, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
So why should we entertain them?
Let's talk about the countries that have said, wamekataa, they've said we are not paying. Mozambique. Let's talk about countries such as Ghana, Malaysia.
Ghana, what they did, in fact, Ghana is an interesting one. Ghana didn't refuse to pay.
Yeah.
What Ghana said, they said they're going through what is called a debt distress exchange. To default too. But they decided to give it a new name. Debt distress exchange.
Okay.
Now, debt distress exchange meant this. For Ghana, luckily, they targeted the domestic market. So they told the bondholders, now you are holding this bond. It's worth how much? It's worth 1 million. Interest rate is how much? interest rate is 14%. Come into the room. So the bondholders are the room. Now what we are going to do, your bond is worth 1 million. Okay, we are giving you a haircut.
Yeah.
We are reducing the figure. Your bond is now what? 700,000. We've taken 300 as government. The interest rate was how much? 14%. No, we'll pay you interest rate at 3%. And we meet in 3 years. Take it or leave it. So it's an exchange. That's distress. It's a distress exchange. Now, if you had 1 million shillings, number one, the value has gone down to 700,000 because government is now saving the 300 to show up the economy. The interest rate you're expecting of 14%
Has gone down.
has gone down to 3%. But the maturity was this year. No, let's meet in 3 years. That's when you'll be able to access your 700,000 Kenya shillings plus interest.
Yeah.
So it was an exchange. And it's still an ongoing process. It's painful. They managed to try to maintain, to avoid having super inflation. But it's a painful process they're going through. So the bondholders have lost money. They've actually lost money. They are yet to get to the depositors. So when you saw, for example, the motor vehicle circulation tax, understand, when a government is broke, this is why I always say this government is broke. It comes to your assets, it comes to the sovereign. These loans are called sovereign loans. Sovereign, who is the sovereign in a country? The sovereign in a country are the people. So when the sovereign has a loan and they're not able to pay for it using their taxes, the government comes to the sovereign's assets. So motor vehicle circulation tax was just one identified group about to capture the sovereign.
Yeah.
That you own a motor vehicle, I will come and take a fraction of the value of your vehicle. That is what it was meant to do. They may, in some instances, come to your accounts. You have a deposit in your account or in M-Pesa. They decide we are taking 30% of your deposit. So if you are 10,000 on M-Pesa, automatically it dumps down to 7,000.
7,000.
You have made a sovereign contribution because the country is broke. It cannot meet its financial obligations. And the rate at which we are going, I'm sorry to say that we are heading there. And the longer we take to look into our data books and to agree as a country on what we should pay legally and what we should not pay, we are now bestrode with so many legal debts. The debt stock that we have is not legal, most of it. So we need to remove that chaff and only remain with the legal debts. We must start saying we are rejecting this one, we are not paying. This one we are doing and we are subjecting it to a forensic audit. Or this one, we are doing a judicial commission of inquiry to ascertain if the money even ever came to Kenya and who took it and who bears responsibility. Malaysia, when the last prime minister left, they had a similar situation. Illegal debts taken, the one, it's called one MDB scandal. And they had to recover the money. In fact, the international lenders had to pay back the money to the people of Malaysia, what had been paid.
Wow.
So when you have a judicial inquiry, a genuine, committed process that wants to look into these debts, you will expose so much.
Don't we have an auditor for that?
You see, the Auditor General has said publicly so many times that I don't even know your debt registers. I don't even know your status of your debts. Because I don't see them. I'm telling you, guys are taking money in your name in Europe. The money does not come into Kenya. How will the Auditor General have sight of it? The control of budget, and maybe I should explain this also further.
Yes, please.
When I said about all money is coming to consolidated fund, you bring all money into one basket.
Yeah.
Once it lands in this one basket, for it to come out, the control of budget will be looking at the Appropriations Act. Okay, it was appropriated for this amount, approve. This one, approve.
Approved.
So they wanted to avoid that scrutiny in our constitution. That is why they decided you can take money abroad and direct it to go to another account without coming here.
Yes.
To avoid the control of budget scrutiny. So even control of budget, she says, I don't know how much money you people.
Hey.
Yeah.
So who knows?
So these are publicly funded institutions.
Yeah.
They are constitutional offices. They're telling you two major ones, control of budget
And
and auditor general. They're telling you we don't know. We don't know your debt stock. We don't know your debt register. We don't know how much you've paid and how much is owed.
Now, assuming we want to sue IMF.
Family, I came across this video. This video is from Lynn Ngugi, something like, Lynn Ngugi in Kenya. There's a lawyer who was explaining. This lawyer was explained everything clearly. How our leaders steal money from us as poor people. But at the end, in return, we are the ones who pay back those loans that they take from IMF, local banks, whatever they... And what is bad about everything? When they take those loans, they siphon the money in their accounts overseas, and they siphon money in their sofas. So it's kind of crazy because it means these leaders have got safes, they've got places where they put money. Because I remember of one country in East Africa, after a coup d'etat, a lot of money was found in suitcases. That shows how they steal money from us. That's why Kenyan youth have risen up and they say, never again this should happen. Because the loans that they take, it's either they get it from IMF, whatever lie they will give IMF that, okay, we need a loan for such and such, or whatever bank they will go to and ask for a loan, and whatever lie they will bring it up. Then they have a chance of siphoning the money wherever they want, whatever account. They don't give the country's account. They give a certain account so that they can siphon the money for their own benefits and their family. This is really strange. We have to wake up as youth in our different countries in Africa, because we are made by our own presidents that we put in that office of presidency. And they play games once they get there. They think about their families, about themselves when they leave office, if they will ever leave office, if they don't become dictators. So this is crazy. Looking at our country, South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa was found with a lot of dollars. How did that money came about to be in his sofas? Because it means it's either he doesn't have account overseas or wherever. How did he siphon the money in the coaches? That shows that our leaders are not working for us. They are working against us. They want us poor. They never want us our countries to succeed. Family, when you listen to this, man, with understanding. Because now in Kenya, there is no peace. Youth have risen up because of this kind of leaders. And according to my understanding, I was watching another video again. I saw a video that shows that the GNU in South Africa has made banks make a lot of money. The same GNU, because it means we don't choose our own government. There are people from there, business people, who are the ones who are working against the will of the people of the country. That's why you find all this rigging of elections because of this. Family, let's comment respectfully. Leave your comment respectfully. I love you all. Bravo, bravo.